Painkillers, blood thinners, and chemotherapy drugs are just some of the substances that are found in your drinking water. There's new information that some drugs are ending up in our water at levels never seen before.
Most people don't think about where their water comes from. They just turn on the tap and they expect it to be there.
It's a public health crisis of massive proportions.
Toxic cocktail of chemicals in our tap water could lead to cancer.
PFAs, which are chemicals used in consumer products like firefighting foam and non-stick cookware, can be found in 610 locations across the country, and that includes drinking water for about 19 million people.
These chemicals could result in over 100,000 cancer cases over a lifetime, which is about 70 years.
Thousands of people in Parkersburg and along the entire Ohio River were contaminated.
They come and tested our water and they said, we'll send you a report in a couple of weeks or whatever. And they called us in a few days and they said, do not drink your water, don't use it for cooking, nothing.
How high were your levels when they told you about your water?
They're supposed to be under 40 parts per trillion. Ours is 26,000.
26,000?
A lot of chemicals, when they go into your body or when they end up in the environment, they break down, they slowly decompose. PFAS don't do that. Once you put PFAS somewhere, it's going to stay there practically forever. They are nearly indestructible.
So if you're drinking tap water, you might want to think twice because it's pretty toxic.
On the surface, tap water sounds like this great thing. The government is giving us peasants cheap, practically free drinking water? How kind of them, right? But in reality, your tap water is slowly killing you. See, every time you drink a glass of American tap water, every time you take a shower, wash your hands, or rinse your mouth, you are ingesting a giant cocktail of highly toxic chemicals. Toxic chemicals such as PFAS, also known as forever chemicals that stay in your body forever.
They are found in every one of you.
Are linked to higher rates of cancer and birth defects.
I've got great news for you, and it's right under this macaroni and cheese. Now, glass ovenware comes with a Teflon finish. So now glass is not the cleanup problem it used to be.
Between 1951 and 2003, almost 800 tons of PFOA, that special type of forever chemical that also was found in my blood, were discharged by DuPont.
PFAS contamination is really a national crisis. The more we test, the more we find it. It is the manufacturers like DuPont and 3M who have gotten us here today. So they've known for 70 years that they were poisoning the water, and they didn't tell the EPA, they didn't tell their neighbors, they didn't tell their workers, they didn't tell anyone because they were making too much money. The FDA knew in the 1960s, the Department of Defense knew in the 1970s, the EPA has known since at least the 90s, and they didn't treat the issue with the amount of urgency that it needed.
The EPA doesn't require utilities to regularly test for them, so there's really no way for the average American to know if it's even in their drinking water right now or in their food. There has been no new drinking water standard in the United States since the 1990s, 30 years.
Drinking tap water also means that you're drinking every pharmaceutical drug known to man, like birth control. People urinate out the drugs they take into the wastewater that then gets treated and sent back to your faucets.
Some of the drug comes in us and through us and out of us totally unchanged. So we actually have active drugs going into the waterway through our urine or feces.
Over the last several years, the U.S. Geological Survey has tested the water. It found that something in the water is tampering with the hormones of 85% of the male smallmouth bass and a quarter of the male largemouth bass, and causing them to develop female reproductive traits. Researchers suspect pharmaceuticals from human waste that the upstream water treatment plant can filter.
There's also heavy metals like lead, chlorine, pesticides, fluoride, microplastics.
You might think your tap water tastes terrible, but water we bathe and shower in could actually be more dangerous than the water that we drink.
Yeah, it's true. You see, when you drink water, our bodies filter some of the bad stuff out. That's not ideal because it's still in your system, but when we shower or bathe, our skin absorbs all the contaminants like chlorine and stuff 6 times faster than if we can drink. This is ordinary Tucson tap water, and it's the same water. And these are pool test drops that you test your backyard swimming pool. Yeah. So if it turns yellow, there's chlorine in there.
Instantly.
Yep. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swish my fingers around in this one a little bit to simulate taking a bath or a shower. Drop the same number of drops in the same water.
I don't see anything. So you're telling me that in the 2 seconds you had your fingers in that water, where did it go?
Every bit of that chlorine was absorbed through my skin, and now it's going into my bloodstream.
In fact, this is what a reverse osmosis filter in an American home looks like after just 3 months of use. Needless to say, if you want to be a king, you shouldn't be drinking the water of the peasants. But why? Why is American tap water this terrible? Welcome to Evil Food Supply, and this is how America poisoned our water.
As Mark Twain once said, whiskey is for sipping and water is for fighting. And there's going to be a lot of fighting about this before it's done.
The wealthiest individuals do not consume the same water as the general public, so it is recommended that you opt for high-quality water as well. Similarly, they also invest differently from the masses. They don't just invest in public markets. That's for the commoners. Also, with the way the media works these days, those stocks and bonds could become worthless in a matter of weeks. The wealthy spend so wisely that even their splurge purchases are investments, like one of the most exclusive luxury assets, fine art. Investments like these tend to be less impacted by recent events, which is why last fall, while everyone was panicking about inflation and interest rates, some of the wealthiest Americans were trying to get their hands on Paul Allen's art collection. This isn't a new trend. Since 1995, blue-chip art pieces outpaced the S&P 500 by 131% according to Citi. And according to Deloitte, the global value of art is expected to grow a whopping $1 trillion by 2026, which means there's still time for everyday investors. This is why what Masterworks is doing is so special. Their team has created a one-of-a-kind database tracking decades worth of auction records. They're giving you the opportunity to invest in fractional shares of contemporary art, from legends like Picasso, Banksy, and Monet. Meaning you only invest a fraction of this masterpiece's true value, and you still see proportional returns on your investment. To date, Masterworks has sold over $45 million worth of artwork and distributed the net proceeds to investors, which explains why over 700,000 people have signed up so far. Offerings usually sell out in hours, so they've had to make a wait list, but our subscribers can skip the line by clicking the link in the description. In the late 1800s, Americans started laying down the pipes for their tap water infrastructure. And what material did they build these water pipes out of? Why, they chose the most durable, malleable, abundant metal they could find: lead. See, back then, they didn't know lead was all that bad. They just wanted to build some awesome pipes. And so, America's tap water was being delivered straight to your faucet via toxic lead pipes. And as the decades went on, scientists began to realize that exposure to lead, even in very small amounts, could lead to things like blindness and anemia. But the damage had already been done. America had been drinking lead-tainted water for decades at this point. By the 1920s, multiple states banned the installation of lead pipes. But the problem was, what about all the lead pipes that were already installed? You can't just tear out all the lead pipes across the nation. It would be a near impossible feat, not to mention very expensive. So local governments took a shortcut. They added an anti-corrosion chemical directly into the water supply to counteract the runoff from the lead pipes. So when the water runs through the lead pipes, this anti-corrosion chemical sticks to the lead pipes and forms a protective barrier between the pipes and the tap water. This seemed like a genius quick fix at the time, but it definitely wasn't foolproof. Random vibrations from the ground can cause this protective layer to chip away, exposing your tap water to high amounts of lead. One man in Chicago tested his tap water while construction was going on outside his house, and he found that it was infected with lead at 455,000 ppb. The EPA considers 15 ppb to be dangerous. But it's not just random vibrations that can expose you to lead. Remember the Flint water crisis? Back in the early 2010s, the mayor of Flint, Michigan, decided to switch the city's water supply from the Detroit River to the cheaper Flint River to save money. But the problem was, the Flint River water was dirtier than the Detroit River water. So the mayor decided that the best solution was to just add in more cleansing agents to clean it. What he didn't know was that these extra chemicals made the water more acidic. and this acidic water stripped that anti-corrosion layer inside the lead pipes. And so, lead from those aging pipes started leaking into the water supply. And soon, the entire city of Flint, Michigan had brown, dirty, smelly, lead-filled water coming out of their faucets. And as of today, there are between 9.7 and 12.8 million lead water pipes still in operation, serving 22 million Americans. Lead water pipes that at any random moment can absolutely destroy your health, especially for kids. Lead exposure can cause speech and language problems, developmental delays, decreased bone and muscle growth, poor muscle coordination, damage to the nervous system, kidneys, and/or hearing, seizures, and even unconsciousness in cases of extremely high lead levels. But lead is just one of the ingredients in your glass of American tap water. We already covered how fluoride was introduced into our water supply in this video that you can watch by clicking the card on the top right corner. So what we need next is a little sprinkle of forever chemicals. In the early 1900s, American tap water wasn't too bad. Aside from the lead, we didn't have any weird chemicals or drugs in the water to worry about. But what we did have was waterborne bacteria. And this type of bacteria could kill someone in an instant. And to remedy this bacteria issue, counties all over America started dumping chlorine into their tap water. At first, people protested against this. I don't want to drink bleach, but after a while, they just accepted it. Drinking a tiny bit of bleach was better than dying from mutant bacteria. So everyone shut their mouths and started drinking bleach along with the lead. But then, in 1938, everything changed when a scientist accidentally discovered Teflon, a synthetic chemical that made everything non-stick, waterproof, and slippery. It was a miracle chemical, and DuPont started putting it in everything, from non-stick pans to pizza boxes. And so, the American chemical boom began. It was a magical time, when companies like DuPont and 3M thought all the world's problems could be solved with chemistry.
Nearly everything in our daily lives is improved by chemistry.
So, chemical factories started popping up in small towns all over America. These small towns needed the money, the jobs, and they were more than happy to work for an exciting, cutting-edge company that was producing chemicals for a better living. But little did these towns know that in order to make things like Teflon, DuPont had to produce a chemical so strong, so durable, that it's basically indestructible. An indestructible class of chemicals called PFAS, specifically PFOA and PTFE. These PFAS chemicals are so indestructible that they would later be nicknamed forever chemicals, because they do not break down in nature. And during this manufacturing process, these factories would create a lot of toxic forever chemical waste. Forever chemical waste that would need to be disposed of somewhere, right? And in the beginning, these chemical makers did pretty much what every other American factory tends to do. They burned the waste and piped it right into the air, or dumped it straight into the ground. Either way, these forever chemicals would end up contaminating the groundwater. And as the years went on, the people who lived in these small towns with newly infected tap water would develop things like cancer and hormonal disorders. John Hickey, a man who lived in Hoosick Falls, developed kidney cancer at the age of 60, even though none of his genetic line had it. And PFAS chemicals, which include PFOA and PTFE, have been linked to kidney cancer specifically. He eventually found out that his tap water contained extremely high levels of PFOA. It had been drinking it for decades.
Toxic chemicals linked to serious diseases like, cancer, liver damage, and thyroid disease. And guess what? They never, ever degrade.
This woman from North Carolina lost her baby from drinking PFOA-rich tap water during her pregnancy.
Did it ever occur to you that that water might be contaminated?
Never. Not in a million years.
So I breastfed my daughter for at least a year. And I was happy. It was fine. Everything was fine. And suddenly, she becomes 4 years old and she's slightly disabled. Why? Because she had a shortness of oxygen in her brain. Maybe the problem is caused by that chemical company. Maybe not. Is she dying? No. Will she get cancer? Who knows? I don't know.
Today, forever chemicals have infected practically all of our water supply, with nearly all Americans, including newborn babies, carrying PFAS in their bloodstream. But if you thought forever chemicals were the end of it, oh, you're so sadly mistaken. Here's the other thing you have to understand about our tap water system. It's that a lot of that tap water that comes out of your faucet comes from recycled toilet water. Yes, that's right. Whatever you excrete out into your toilet gets flushed down the drain, into a water treatment facility, and back into your tap water. Which is all fine and dandy if these water treatment facilities could actually filter out everything. But unfortunately, they can't. Most municipalities just don't have the technology to filter out every single random chemical out there, which is a problem because Americans take a lot of drugs. 60% of Americans over the age of 18 take at least one type of pharmaceutical drug. And antibiotic use has skyrocketed to 270 million prescriptions per year. Birth control pills, narcotics, antibiotics, Prozac, all these substances that contain a whole cocktail of chemical compounds, hormones, and other things that alter our bodies are all getting excreted straight into your tap water.
The other worrisome thing about tap water is most of the filtration systems used in municipalities do not get rid of antibiotics in water, and I can guarantee you that they are in almost all of our commercial water systems.
And the effects of drinking this random mix of pharmaceuticals is pretty terrifying. Scientists have done studies on fish who swim in this drug-filled sewage water, and they found that the male fish were showing signs of feminization, and some were even being born intersexed. The scientists also found residues of antidepressants like Prozac, Celexa, and Zoloft in the brains of some of the fish.
There's something happening to the rainbow darter, a tiny fish that lives in the rivers of southern Ontario. If they're downstream from a sewage treatment plant, the male fish turn into females. What's causing the males to develop eggs? Human hormones, residue from prescription drugs that are flushed into the river.
If you expose them to wastewater, they will feminize. They will have eggs in the testes.
But it's not just the fish. Philadelphia tap water contains 56 different pharmaceutical drugs. Southern California water has high amounts of both anti-epileptic and anti-anxiety medication. Whatever medications your neighbors are taking, you are too. And you might be thinking, well, okay, I'll just stick to bottled water then. Bottled water isn't too bad, right? Well, think again. Look on any bottled water label and you will find words like pure, purified, life. But these bottled waters are far from pure, and they are definitely not giving you life. See, whenever you see anything along the lines of purified water on a bottle of water, that's just a rosy sounding name for American municipal tap water that you have to pay 3,000% more for. In a recent study, it was found that 1/3 of American bottled water brands contain chemical contaminants that exceed recommended levels. And apparently, as long as these bottled water companies don't go over the maximum levels of contaminants listed by the EPA, the water can be sold. That's right. These companies are literally just filling up plastic bottles with tap water and reselling it to you for 3,000% the price. And if there's a sprinkle of PFAS or pharmaceuticals, that's just fine, as long as it's technically under the limit. Even spring water bottles aren't safe. Companies like Starkey Spring Water contain 3 times more arsenic than other brands. Poland Spring contains PFAS. And what about luxury water brands like Evian that comes from the French Alps, or Fiji water from the rainforests of Fiji, slowly filtered by volcanic rock? These waters are famous for being the purest of the pure. And for the most part, the water itself is not half bad. But these brands are sold in plastic bottles. Plastic bottles that are repeatedly heated and cooled during the manufacturing and shipping process. These plastic bottles also leak a pesky little chemical called phthalates into your water. And phthalates are known to block the production of androgen, the male hormone that produces testosterone. Plastic bottles also used to contain BPA, a chemical in plastic that has an almost identical structure to human hormones. And BPA has been in our plastic bottles for decades. But in 2008, scientists found out that it is extremely toxic, even in low doses, and can lead to things like severe birth defects, abnormally sized genitalia, and infertility. And when the bottled water companies found out about this, they immediately switched over to a different chemical called BPS. A seemingly noble move, until studies showed that BPS is pretty much the same as BPA.
It's still possible to get a BPA bottle. Most of them have been replaced with BPS bottles, but now the evidence is that BPS acts exactly like BPA. So my opinion is try not to drink a bottled water that comes in a plastic container.
Yes, they did the old switcheroo that major corporations love to do when their chemicals get called out. But now they get to slap a BPA free on their labels so everyone trusts them again, when in reality, they simply replace BPA with another kind of the same chemical. So if American tap water is so bad, why doesn't the government do anything about it? Simple. There's no incentive to. Think about it. What's a more pressing issue that will get votes? Invisible chemicals in the water that you can't see, smell, or taste that aren't going to materialize in diseases until decades later? Or the latest war or social program? But it's not just the government that doesn't have an incentive to clean up the water supply. The small water utilities across the US also do everything they can to avoid filtering chemicals, because filtering these complex industrial chemicals is super expensive. And tap water is a business. So if the water utilities decide to only test water from a certain area of town that is less toxic, or only report samples that show low toxicity, they're going to be inclined to do it. Because the last thing they want is to spend more money on expensive water filtration methods because their water was proven to be dirty. A recent report even showed that 33 cities, including Chicago, Boston, and Philadelphia, purposely manipulated their data to save money on filtration. So not only does the government not care about your health, your local water utility doesn't care either. Even if the government did filter out every PFAS chemical, pharmaceutical drug, and scrap of lead, it's kinda too late. We've been saturating ourselves with toxic tap water for over a century, and some of these chemicals might even alter our DNA permanently. Fish that were exposed to pharmaceutical drugs didn't show traits of feminization until a few generations down the line. So this means the chemicals you're taking in today could alter the hormones of your future grandchildren. We've all heard the number that water makes up more than half of our bodies. Water is the essence of life. It's the foundation of your vitality. So you need to be taking it seriously. And you should not, for the life of you, be drinking or bathing in tap water. We are not gonna pretend that we have all the answers. We're still learning about this ourselves. But here's what we do. We only drink natural spring water that comes in glass bottles, like San Pellegrino and Laricia from Italy, or Mountain Valley from Oklahoma. We just get boxes of these shipped to our place every few weeks. Sure, it's a little more expensive, but you're a lot less likely to be drinking birth control. We have no affiliation with these brands, but these brands should definitely sponsor us if you're watching. And as for the tap water you shower in, that's a little trickier. Right now, we're testing out this shower filter that reduces chloramine, chlorine, fluoride, iron, lead, heavy metals, bacteria, and more from your shower water. And so far, it's definitely better than regular tap water. And if you want a cheat sheet with all of our water recommendations listed out, along with what to avoid, scroll down and click the link below to sign up for our Evil Food Insiders newsletter, and you'll get all of this sent straight to your inbox. By signing up for this newsletter, you'll also get alerts on breaking news about our food supply as they happen, so that you can protect yourself and the people you care about. And next up on Evil Food Supply, we're gonna expose the dark underbelly of the US beef industry and how just 4 companies monopolize the entire industry. Click the circle on the screen to subscribe so you don't miss it, and then click the square on the screen to sign up for the newsletter now.